Hello, everyone. Welcome to MarshStream. I'm Stephanie Weisman, Artistic Director and founder of the Marsh and MarshStream. So glad to be here on this Thursday night. Thank you all for coming, everyone who is here, and thank you for joining us at MarshStream. So tonight, we have Wayne Harris, who has been working at the Marsh for the past decade or more. We're going to ask him how many years. He's an award-winning performer, and he's director of our Marsh Youth Theater program for the past 5 years. He's a singer. He does pageantry world. He's amazing. And now he's decided to expand his reach, developing a new workshop focused on diversity and inclusion. And we are thrilled to have him here to talk about this and everything. Welcome, Wayne.
Hello, Stephanie. Thanks so much for having me here tonight.
We're happy to have you. Good to see you there in your corner, your performing corner.
Yes, it's theoretically collecting sound.
Yes, you sound quite good.
All right.
You look and sound good, Wayne.
That's the important thing. Do I look good?
Yeah, you look good. You sound good.
Now we're getting to what's important. All right.
Right. Don't say another word. You could ruin it, right? Open your mouth, get frozen in a weird way. You know, all the things that happen in life and are magnified in Zoom.
Absolutely.
So, Wayne, tell us a little bit. Tell me a little bit about you. How did you come to be who you are right now?
In
Too
this
question, Wayne?
How did I come to be? Well, I started off as a poor black child in St. Louis, Missouri. Well, you know, you and I have talked about this quite a bit. I'm a classic case in terms of my performance world. I'm a classic case of a citizen storyteller coming to the Marsh and taking advantage of all of the classes and the workshops and the performance opportunities. And I've been here since 2000, Stephanie.
Those 20 years.
In one capacity or another, you know, starting off like many people do, you know, thinking, well, I got a story to tell, and then seeing that they were offering this wonderful opportunity at the Marsh, and I took advantage of it. And as you know, I've created a great relationship with David Ford over the years, who's been my director. So as we put pieces together and gotten more and more creative and opening up, it's, you know, I've been so lucky to have David and the Marsh kind of helping out there. The other side of my life has been, and I've told a story or two about it, the other side of my life has always been about the world of pageantry. The marching arts is what we call it. And that's, I've always participated in marching bands and drum and bugle corps. Started at the age of 8, and I still do it to this day. And so those are the two kind of large pillars in my life, along with the fact that for the last, I believe, is it 6 years now, Stephanie, that I've been the program director for Marsh Youth Theater. I think this is going into the 6th year.
Wow.
There.
So, Wayne, I have a couple of questions just before you go farther. So, were you telling stories before you got to the Marsh, or thinking about it?
I'm told by friends who've known me for a while that I've always been a storyteller. So, yeah.
But I mean, were you publicly doing it anywhere?
Beg your pardon?
Were you publicly telling stories for audience?
No. Though I did do something with a traveling Jewish theater. There was this one class that I took early on, but it was kind of disconnected.
And are you still marching in the marching bands, Wayne?
Do I still march? No one needs to see that. That is not what I do. Though I did I did, and I'm proud to say that I was in, at one point in time, the world champion drum and bugle corps. We were amazing, and there you go.
Was that in St. Louis?
No. I left St. Louis to go and march with a drum and bugle corps out of Anaheim, California, and so that kind of got me out of the Midwest and to the West, and kind of led to a lot of other opportunities I had along the way.
So tell us a little bit about your pageantry life. It's quite extensive and international, well, at least national. I'm not sure about international.
No, I'm all over the place. Well, like I said, I get this great opportunity to work with amazing young people in marching bands, high school marching bands in Texas, color guards in Atlanta, or high schools here in the Bay Area and all over. And as you all know, when you see the marching bands and you see those type of groups, precision is a real important aspect, uniformity and making sure everyone's moving together and the counts are all together. And, it's what I grew up doing, and we were very militaristic in our approach to what we, considered entertainment. It was very paramilitary in its earlier stages. Well, I started taking just some theater classes, a couple of improv classes while I was living in Canada. I had been brought to Canada to teach an all-girls marching band in Edmonton, Alberta, of all places. And there I was, with a lot of time on my hand. And so I started taking these classes, and improvisation was one. I think I took a mime class. Well, I would take these classes, and then I would go to teach the young ones how to march and stay in step and be in line. And eventually I started thinking, well, maybe they could, kind of be more like characters rather than just little tiny army men. So I started trying to see ways that I could integrate what I was learning and experiencing with improvisation classes and with the acting classes. And this is really early on. This is probably early 80s. And I started applying it to my groups, and my groups started winning. And that's, we were unique enough to make a splash, and we kind of moved up. There's a whole world of pageantry, as you can imagine, and so if you got a decent group, you get more exposure, and I kind of, that's my thing now. I no longer teach the performers how to march or I certainly don't teach them how to spin anything. I come in to create a program for these kids who have to have exact counts and be exact with the notes and the shapes. And I come in and we go through a process through improvisation that allows them to go beyond the notes, beyond the shapes. And basically, it's based on a concept that we're really familiar with in the theater, subtext. So for every movement that they have, well, let's kind of create a narrative so that movement has a level of motivation, real honest motivation, as opposed to just, I make this shape on 3 and that shape on 4. Well, now we can talk about, well, what does this feel like? Surprise. And it gives a whole different feeling to those 2 counts. And so I've been blessed to have been with amazing organizations and have kind of, that's what I do. I go around messing up these regimented organizations and try to apply purpose to what they're doing.
Were you the first to do this?
I say, certainly in the way it's being applied now, I am doing things that have not been done before, but there certainly have been theater people involved in pageantry over the years. If any of my pageantry friends are out there, they'll know the name of George Zingali. He was actually a fledgling actor in New York for years, but he was at the time the best drill writer in the country. Just wrote these beautiful, intricate drills. And he had such a theatrical nature about him. And he did, before me, start to really focus on those type of skills.
So you took over Marsh Youth Theater 6 years ago. And how did you come to do this? You know, like how did that transition into Marsh Youth Theater?
You and Mark gave me a phone call. Mark Kenward called, and the former program director had been gone for a while, and you know, you wanted to go in a slightly different direction than MYT had done, make it more community focused and more about process, you know, and really kind of reaching out. And so when we talked, you told me how little I'd have to do, and and I sure. But no, it was an opportunity because I had already been working for Marsh Youth Theater. I had done summer camps with them in some of the classes, so I was familiar with the wonderful things we do there. And so, and oh, wow, I was just retiring from 27 years of being the transportation manager for school bus operations. So I had just retired. You guys caught me at a vulnerable time.
Did you do much improv in your transportation job?
Every day. And which comes back to one of the reasons why I think the New Perspectives workshop can be valuable. I was talking the other day to Tom Andrews, a good friend of mine. Hopefully he's here. He's been helpful in this process. And, you know, and looking at the improv and those type of exercises that we did during the workshop, and we'll get to that later. Every workplace, every school environment, every community environment, you have got to be on your toes. And the ideas, the basic ideas of improvisation in terms of affirming yes and, in terms of being open to pivoting, you know. I dealt with 3 unions, you know, and so that alone is reason for insanity and improvisation.
Okay, we're going to do a couple more things before we get there because it's leading up to this incredible new workshop. So is your performances, right? You started from your storytelling, you started to do full-length solo performances. Can you talk a little bit about that, Wayne?
Yes, I can, Stephanie. Like I said, I kind of found the Marsh, and I took a Charlie Varon workshop, put your work on stage workshop. And I put together a 15-minute piece we had a great workshop group. Charlie Hinton was in that group. It was just a great group of people to be around while I got introduced to this world. And I ended up with a 15-minute piece that we presented at a Monday night at the Marsh. And wow, I can still remember how nervous and how pent up I was, you know, going in with my 15 minutes. And it was just a marvelous experience. And boy, those of you that have done that, you know, you get the bug, you get that applause and the affirmation. The Marsh community is so good at that. And so I took that piece, and then I wrote another 15 minutes, and then another 15 minutes, and eventually I had about 75 minutes of this piece called Mother's Milk. It was the first edition of Mother's Milk. I remember doing I guess we had the Marsh Risings then. I remember you coming to see the full piece, and allowing me to have a run. And I hadn't been more than 2 years into this process, and there I had a run at the Marsh. The same stage that Charlie Varon was on, the same stage that Josh, it was mind blowing. And ran downstairs, and then I'm not sure why you did this, Stephanie, but you allowed me to run for 12 weeks, I think it was, upstairs in the yoga room, where I literally had the opportunity to kind of learn how to tell stories in that environment. And so it just kind of built from there. The second piece was a piece called Train Stories, which was fictional. Mother's Milk was about my family. I wrote a fictional piece, but by now I was connected with David Ford, and he and I just started working together. And also along the way, I joined a notorious group called Club Solo, which is a ongoing workshop of solo performers, that include Bruce Packman, Mark Kenward, Rebecca Fisher, Randy Rutherford over the years, just really some amazing artists. So I got connected with those guys, and that's really been an engine for me to keep doing. I guess I'm on my 6th full-length production now. The last 2, I've started to integrate music a lot, is a real big part of what I'm doing. The integration of music and narrative, part of a really exciting festival that's going to be coming up through the Marsh, where we are showcasing our solo musical programs, and you might want to speak to that later. So, yeah. And I have done 3 Zoom productions since we started in April. I'm very proud of that. 3 Zoom productions.
Tell us a little bit about your letter, your Martin Luther King letter, and going to Palestine.
So I'm thinking it was 2013. I got a call from the State Department. Actually, I got an email from the State Department, and it asked me if I would be interested in coming to Jerusalem to perform this piece called about Martin Luther King. And I swear, Stephanie, at first I was looking for the postmark kind of deal from Nigeria. I thought it was, what's this scam? How much money do I have to, but it had all of the official kind of stuff at the bottom. And so I emailed them back and said, I would love to come to Jerusalem and share my Martin Luther King story. I didn't have a Martin Luther King story. And that then became part of the story, because I put this website together, right? And I was all excited about the website, and I was putting all of the things I was going to offer. And I talked about all of my school offerings and teaching adults, all that good stuff. And I really did plan to have a Martin Luther King piece. So I had notes. I had 3x5 cards. So it did exist. It just never got done until I got that gig. And then David and I, in 3-4 weeks, maybe it was a little longer, created a piece called At the Crossroads. Martin Luther King. It's about the letter that he wrote while in jail in Birmingham. And I had always imagined all of the things around that a jail cell while he was there, and he speaks to Socrates and Gandhi and all of these ideas that we would eventually see at the March on Washington. You know, some of the themes in later famous speeches of his were kind of incubated there during that period. And I kind of mix that in, as I tend to do, with where was I at that time? You know, being of a certain age, I was around during that. So I melded stories about the history of that time, as well as where I was at with it. And I took it to not just Jerusalem, but to Palestine. I was there for up to 10 days, traveling throughout Palestine, taking that story, Martin Luther King's story, to Bethlehem, to Jericho and Jenin, and it was what an amazing opportunity and life changing.
Amazing, huh? And you hadn't even written it.
Yep.
I think this is the first time I really understood that, but that's okay.
Right.
I never did it at the Marsh, so I probably haven't seen it either.
Right, it kind of has not had public performance here in the United States. We didn't finish it. I had to get on a plane. It was kind of...
Maybe we'll have to see it. Just one more thing before we get to your workshop. I think one of the most amazing things of understanding, of watching your development among all these other things, that train story show is amazing, as your new rendition of Mother's Milk, all your shows, amazing, amazing shows. But it was watching when we opened the Marsh Berkeley Cabaret, and we started having Randy Craig and Robbie come in and play. You started singing with them every week. And you were always a good singer, Wayne. But after 5 years of doing it, you're a great singer. Watching someone's commitment to come every week and develop themselves, and watch how your voice and your presence on stage and all that stuff has just zoomed. And that's always been like, wow. Watching that happen with Wayne, I think, provides a lot of insight into you taking something and going with it.
Blessed again to be in the right place. The Craig and McGregor band, you know, I mean, Randy Craig and Robbie McGregor, you know, these are world-class musicians we have at the Berkeley Marsh, along with all of the other guys, John McCardle. I mean, there's just, you know, one pro after the other down there. And getting the opportunity to sing with them, you know, there it is. You know, they always say, a good band can make a bad singer sound good, and a great band can make a bad singer sound great. I have worked. I'm going to give myself that credit, but it really has been the ability to be amongst these professionals. And you know, I'm not the only singer that comes through there, and some of the other singers, and just being in that environment. You know, once again, all praise to the Marsh in terms of creating an opportunity for Wednesday night at the Marsh to exist. And it's got its own little community, and it's really a cool thing. And I miss that as much as anything, you know, during this time. Can't wait to get back together with the band, you know.
Well, watching you develop in that, now I'm watching you develop this new direction, this new perspectives workshop. How did this come to be? What encouraged you?
I got a call from a young lady who human resources, and she knew what I was doing in terms of improvisation with the pageantry groups, and she knew about that I had done it on some corporate levels and that type of stuff. And she just asked me whether or not I thought I could take that process of improvisation and apply it to diversity and inclusion. Well, I hadn't really thought about it in that way, but the more we talked about it, the more sense that it made. So it really was this young lady, Megan, I don't know if she's here tonight, who brought up the question, would that work? And I immediately, I mean, boy, talk about purpose during all of this madness. Literally, it has been my summer project, and it's been a real blessing. So that's kind of where it came from. And as I thought about it, I thought I was kind of in a real good place to try to create a program that would give folks tools to kind of navigate the times that we're going through. In particular, we talked about how to create an open and diverse culture, within the office culture, and how we could do that. And I thought about all kind of three of my worlds, and thought that some combination of them could do it. That we could create an interactive virtual workshop utilizing the skills, the experiences, that you get with improvisation, and then you couple that with that world of storytelling, and how transformative storytelling can be, and then apply that to focus on diversity, inclusion in the workplace, in the community. And it seemed like, these things could work together. And so that's kind of the premise I started with, the idea of having a program that could allow people to examine old patterns, right? That we're kind of dug into, that we do in terms of just being reaction. But because of improv and because of some of the processes that we take, it helps you cultivate new skills, right? How improv kind of goes, wow, I can do that, or I can communicate in that way. And I thought we could create a really safe, nurturing environment, even on Zoom. I've been Zooming a lot, Stephanie, and I'm amazed at how I've been able to be a part of communities on Zoom. I've been doing improv workshops with schools in Florida and Texas virtually, and at first I was really kind of, how do you do an improv, on Zoom? And I was amazed how you can create community. And that's why I wanted to have improvisation as a part of this process, because those of us that have taken improv, or even if you've heard of improv, that it's been used in the corporate world for years now to build team building. They call it collaboration, that idea that you promote innovation through the concept of yes and it just kind of creates a creative environment. And so it's always been used in terms of team building, taking risk, and I felt that component, trying to address such important, discussions, it needed to be a safe environment. And so the improvisation, the games we played, the exercises that we did, it really helped to create a community. I certainly would like to hear from some of our participants who are here tonight, but I always remember not wanting to leave, and that just about everything could have gone further in one direction or another. So taking the I don't know, the things that you get, the values you get from the improvisation games and experiences, and then coupling that with some of the basic concepts of storytelling, everything from beginning, middle, and end, best practices, and talking about how we share our stories. It was a pretty fun experience. Should I stop now before I go into story prompts?
Yeah. I think also from being around you during this building of this workshop, it seems like you started to do a lot of research into wide-ranging things. Can you speak to that?
Boy, you talk about going down the rabbit hole and stuff. And it's just been, I just turned 66 years old, Stephanie. And this summer I've learned and more things than I can remember learning in a very long time, these last 4 or 5 months. And all it's done is kind of revealed to me how much more there is to go into. But I was really intrigued by one of the solo arts evenings where they talked about art as a healing. Do you know which program I'm speaking to, Fred?
Fred Johnson.
Yes. And the research that's being done in various places.
John Hopkins.
John Hopkins, yes. And I had already kind of been talking to some folks about, in the storytelling world, which is slightly different than the solo performance world, but in the storytelling world, the idea of the power of storytelling has always been kind of to the forefront. That as we share our stories, we can create transformative moments. And what was interesting is that over these last few years, there's been quite a bit of scientific research. And there's this guy that I should have brought his book. I can't believe I don't have his book here handy. I'll get it here in a second. But the idea that we can, through understanding of how our stories affect people, that we can construct stories to elicit certain reactions. And we all know this. We all have known this, just instinctively. We know, particularly in our community, when that audience is transfixed, you know that at that moment they've transported you. And depending on how you kind of manipulate chemical levels, you elicit certain emotions out of the audience. Oxytocin, higher levels of oxytocin. We've seen it in audiences. There becomes this bonding between the performer and the audience. There's a trust going on, and then it creates creative, or rather that trust kind of opens up to empathy. That actually, that's oxytocin is the empathy drug. That's the one where you grab them. But there are other ways that we can, and I hate to use the word manipulate, but there are other ways that we can manipulate our stories.
Encourage.
Thank you. That we can encourage certain responses or encourage certain landscapes in order to have the conversations.
Do you think this is more particular to storytelling than, say, ensemble plays and things like that?
I think there's a vulnerability to the solo performer or the singularity of that moment. I mean, there's nothing more vulnerable, you know this, than to be on that stage in front of 100 people. Clothes on or not, it doesn't get much more naked than that. And I think there is, and I'm sure it happens in ensemble situations. I mean, we certainly, boy, Angels in America comes to mind, and how much I had empathy for the various characters, going through the AIDS deal in the 80s. Absolutely, those things happen. So yeah, I'd have to say that. It's just not my experience, but I've certainly felt that connection in the black box.
So Wayne, I think you were going to do something. Would you like to do it now?
Well, yes, you asked me to tell a story because, this lecture stuff kind of gets old. And one of the aspects of the of the workshop was a series of story prompts. I came up with a story prompt to kind of focus an idea. For instance, I asked if your life was a comic book, what would your superpowers be? And that allows the participants to look at themselves in a different way. It also is a really good tool to kind of open up. It's one of our earlier sessions where everybody got to say what their superpower was and their origin story. And it's a really good way to kind of create community and to allow the participants to look at their journey in heroic measures. I love doing it with the kids, but it also worked on a very cool level with adults in that you're having to take a new perspective and look at the journey that got you to where you are. So that was the process. We had various story prompts. And typically I would model a story that fit the prompt, was kind of how it went. And so there were a series of stories relative to the prompts. And I'm looking for additional stories that I've written or could write to do it. And here's one that could fit in terms of asking the participants to chronicle another family member's journey. What do you know about your uncle's journey to America? And that would give us maybe an opportunity to kind of share our culture, share our history, and look at it from a whole different perspective. So this would be a model. Did I set that up?
Yes, you've set it up.
I knew this woman named Ruth. Her face was round like the moon. And when she smiled, her cheeks puffed up like biscuits rising. She loved raising babies, cooking and singing in the church choir. And she made the best banana pudding I have ever had. Yes, Lord. The best banana pudding I have ever had. She was born a light-skinned colored girl to a mama who liked to frequent them juke joints outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. Hey, baby, why don't you buy a gal a drink? Now, mama didn't pay her much mind, but that little girl with the round face and chubby cheeks, she could bring a warmth, a calm into any room she was in. A gentle feel, you might say, like a warm evening sitting on the porch. When them lightning bugs is flying and the sun be getting low on a Mississippi city as the street lights start to glow. When them lightning bugs is flying and the sun be getting low on a Mississippi city as the street lights start to glow, holding on to a love, a never-ending torch, like a warm St. Louis evening, sitting on the porch. Now, by the time that Ruth was 13, she was a live-in domestic, cooking and cleaning and raising babies for white folks in Little Rock. She loved them babies. Boss lady always said she had a gentleness about her, She could calm them babies like a cool breeze. But that didn't stop the boss lady from working her 6 days a week and have her sleep up under the stairs, because that's just the way it was back then. When she was about 17 years old, she fell in love with a man who had just come back from that war over there in Europe. Now, Ruth had the warmth, but he had the heat. Said that she was the only one that could calm him down. Said she was like a cold, sweet tea on a hot day. And he promised to take her away from Boss Lady, from Little Rock. And that he did. Yes, he did. He took her up north to St. Louis. He started working for the railroad, and she started having babies of her own. Now, a woman's life ain't easy. It's like a slow churning blues. 'Cause moving through this world with your heart, you're bound to lose. I say a woman's life ain't easy. It's like a slow churning blues. 'Cause moving through this world with your heart, you're bound to lose. Holding on to a love, a never-ending torch, like a warm St. Louis evening, sitting on the porch. Ruth loved her man and she loved her babies too. And she tried to do her best for both. But the man got taken away by them rails and by drinking and other women. And even when he did come home, he would still be away. Got real mean. Couldn't get that war out of his heart. Even Ruth's smile couldn't keep that anger still. He got drunk one night, put his hands on her, hurt her bad while her 5 children watched. And then he tried to grab the oldest boy, but then he passed out on the couch. Now there are some women who might have shot him, leave him bleeding on the floor. But Ruth, she was not like any woman. She decided to take her children and go. She really did love that man. Loves him still, but he had to go. Because now she had her own babies to raise, and she loved them even more. Now some women are made for loving, and some women are made to fight. But a good woman worth keeping will always do what's right. I say some women are made for loving, and some women are made to fight. But a good woman worth keeping will always do what's right. Holding on to a love, a never-ending torch, like a warm St. Louis evening, sitting on the porch.
Thank you, Wayne. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And that Ruthie, your mama, right?
That's my mom.
So, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say a story like that. I mean, obviously that's highly produced, right? I hope. But it has certain components in it that I think as we were evaluating our own stories, it's things we need to consider. You know, I mean, it's set in a period in time that gives the story context, and it gives enough of a background of my mother to know why things and how my kind of generational wealth, generational education, it speaks to a lot of different things that as you, the listener, hopefully, it kind of opens up an environment that, you know, creates empathy, maybe. Did I turn up some oxytocin? But that allows for the conversation to happen now, if that makes sense.
So what kind of conversation are we talking about here in terms of, I'm assuming in terms of diversity and inclusion, correct?
Correct. And the ability to drill down into a story like that. Like I said, the time puts it into context. So, you know, growing up in the Jim Crow laws, I think many of our white participants in the workshop would not have a lot of firsthand knowledge with the effects or what it felt like to be growing up or trying to move through the world with the Jim Crow laws going on. It speaks to that northern migration that happened. and how important it was for America that happened. But it also, for me anyway, it would give me an opportunity to speak about the the institutional dismantling of the Black family, first in slavery, second through Jim Crow, and onward, through poverty and those type of deals. So those are the conversations I would like to have around that. The other part of that, though, is what you as the listener are experiencing. That's some of the other kind of real interesting part of the science behind this, that both the storyteller and the listener are having real chemical changes. There is this neuroplasticity that's happening, the big word, right? But it's kind of the science behind it. And we know now that as you listen to a story like that, and if I'm able to create, first of all, let's say with higher levels of dopamine, where it kind of creates what they call the mirror neuron effect, where I can transport you to that time and place, that you're open to looking at that moment in a more kind of motivated way. It opens you up to empathy. But it also allows us, I think, ongoing to have further conversations.
Yeah, so the workshop took place on MarshStream over
Yep.
3 weeks on Fridays for eventually 90 minutes each time. Do you want to set the stage, and then let's talk to some of your participants that are here?
I certainly hope some of them will willing to share. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Marsh, and you in particular, Stephanie. I brought this idea of doing a beta test of this workshop, and you allowed that, and my fellow colleagues all kind of allowed themselves to be part of the beta testing. That would be the Marsh staff, Bob and Brian. Well, actually, Brian was a producer, and Kristen. I mean, it was great that the Marsh staff participated. We had representation from the Marsh Board of Directors, which was great. Stephanie, you participated. We had at maximum about 15 people. There were 3 other folks who were teachers. There are a couple of folks that are in human resources. We had one of the headhunters from Airbnb was participating. The young lady from City Center in New York, and also a curriculum director from one of the charter schools in New York City. So there was a real nice kind of slice of different folks with different needs. Oh, there were artists. Lord have mercy. We had dancers and folks who are kind of predominantly in the art involved as well. And, we kind of set it up so that people understood that it was very interactive and that their active participation would be needed. We didn't want this to be another kind of talking head, and we wanted the folks that were going to be involved to know that it was interactive, which I can say that everyone took that on very well. And then our first session was 75 minutes, and we all came away thinking that was not nearly enough time. We all wanted more, and so we increased it to 90 minutes. In between sessions, I kind of had debriefings with certain people and kind of seeing how they were feeling, how was it going. We also had polling questions at the end of each session, and to get a quick shot of how did that go for you. And we are continuing that process of interviewing folks to kind of get their input as we continue to develop the process, the workshop.
So did you want to reach out? Was Tom going to talk a little bit about it, or how
Is Tom here? He's a teacher, so there's a possibility that, that he's in a meeting.
Hey, Wade, I'm here.
Tom is here.
What a great process! It was very eye-opening for me. I love working with Wayne because he's so receptive, and I can be very curt. I can be very short and to the point and go, this won't work. And he listens, and we talk about it, and we spent hours talking about the workshop and honing the workshop. What I came away from the workshops with are these questions, and I have brought them to friends and I have brought them to family, and talked about origin stories and talked about exclusion. And I've started with my homeroom class, I've started talking about their origin stories. I work in a low socioeconomic school district, and just amazing what I'm getting from these kids. But it was an honor to work with this outline, and we continue to talk about it. And as a matter of fact, 2 hours ago, we were talking about it and where it should go.
I think it's important to say that Tom and I have been working together since 1988. I was in Canada, and he actually was instrumental in me coming down and working with a group in San Jose. So he and I have worked together in pageantry, and during this Zoom world, it's been great. Tom's been right there. He also helped to design the graphics and kind of keeping me really aware of texture. And I did not want you guys to be right in front of a talking head. And I think that was important.
Hey, Wayne, I think Sharon is here and Anna is here, I'm pretty sure.
Anna.
Yes, it was a lovely experience and a surprising experience. I was a little hesitant. I didn't know the participants. Wayne's warmth just exudes. He's just such a warm energy, even when people were perhaps sharing, sad moments, he was able to be comforting, but it was very safe for us to talk. And I love the origin story. I mean, for me, to think that, my superpower is courage. I mean, I still live with that because I always think of myself as a fearful person. So to all of a sudden see myself as a courageous person, which I am, it was great. And a lot of the stories that I told were not new to me, but being part of this process became new because I was able to look at different parts of it that I haven't looked at before. And it was very, very easy, very, very easy, a very easy process that I really enjoyed. Nothing, didn't feel like I was put on the spot, didn't feel like I had to share anything I didn't want to share. I wasn't uncomfortable by anything anybody else shared. It was quite lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. You were a force in the workshop. I don't know if we can get Sharon to talk.
No, I thought it was very good. It was very different for me. I took a lot away after the fact, after the class was happening. I'm also thinking about sharing it with my kids in some way. Not on Zoom, we're not doing well, but eventually when I get with them, definitely something to think about. But I enjoyed it, I did.
Thank you.
Wayne, as a participant as well, it was interesting with the stories I came up with that I hadn't thought about before. Like being in the workshop, thinking about, I told a story about the Pelton Club in Newburgh, New York, that didn't allow Jews or Blacks in when I was a kid. And I think, and now it does. And my story about the first Black person, I don't think I'll reveal it right now, but she was kind of a madam. And her husband of the time said, "You let my wife in or else there's a little black book." So I think this is true, or it's not an urban legend, but it made me, it just made me think about those impacts on my life that I hadn't thought about. I hadn't thought about. And it also made me think, and this is something I bring with me, and I don't quite know what to do, because now I know of my friends who stayed in Newburgh. Some of them have joined the Paladin Club. I think Susan Kaplan's still here. Are you awake, dear? She's my best friend. And I don't know, we probably walked by there, but some of the people who stayed in Newburgh joined it. And it's like, how do we deal with this diversity? Because this would be inclusion, right? They were now part of this country club. But in fact, I think of them as traitors.
Right,
So,
right.
like, what do you do? Like, what does your workshop say about those things, and bring up that concept for the first time of, I thought they're traitors, but that doesn't work towards inclusion, certainly. And how do you frame all that kind of stuff?
And I think that's the biggest question I came away from with this experience. I think in the moment, each session was very revealing. I think people were very brave, and you could see discovery. But as I look at it now, I think the challenge is, how do we define what skills come out of this process? How do we define what it is that you can then take to address diversity? And, we talked a lot about things being in context, that if you are telling your story about, that institution, but you're now looking at it in context of diversity I think that had to do with a time when you felt excluded. Putting that in perspective, I think, helps us to kind of see what other people's lives are like. I think it allows us to be empathetic to that situation. What I'm looking for, and what I'm still challenged by, and as we talk about this, is that I do feel that we do need to have tangible results that participants can walk away and say, I've got a certain amount of skills and or experiences that will help me to deal with the next time I am speaking with that at-risk student. Am I creating an environment where that student feels open enough to share? And then am I, kind of creating more of an environment so that we're able to connect? And I'm not sure if we achieve that, partially because almost every section of what we did could have gone another level. It all felt like it, and I don't want to speak for the participants, but individually, we were all saying that it could have been longer. The last session, it was so gratifying to hear people say that they were going to miss coming back together, that we had in fact created that community. Well, as I look at this program in the future, it seems to me that it needs to be expanded so that we can go the next level, to then come up and try to really put our fingers on those tangible skills that you can walk away with, and let it be let that functional storytelling be a real tool, and also a check, a way to check your own privilege, check your own implied biases.
Well, Wayne, you could think of it as part 1 and part 2.
I tell you, in a lot of ways, yeah, I'm not quite sure. Like I said, next week and over the next little while, we're going to be, I get a chance to talk and get people's impressions and suggestions, and then it's back, to the drawing board. I'd like to. We've got some real possibilities of applying the program to some other communities, and I'm excited.
You're amazing. Thank you so much for being part of this interview. It was an incredible workshop. The trajectory of your life is incredible, and I can't wait to see what you're doing at 67, 68, and onward ho. Thank you, Wayne, for being part of the Marsh, for being who you are, the playwright you are, the singer you are, the pageantry guy you are, and now the participant workshop leader you are. Thank you so much. So check out our website, sign up for our emails, wear your mask. Stay away from the virus, stay away from the smoke. When else have we had the opportunity to have a double reason to wear a mask? Thank you so much, and see you next week.
Thank
See you every night at MarshStream. Thank you, Wayne.